Everybody, welcome to PC Perspective podcast without Ryan. Number 447. Being recorded April 26, 2017. I'm Allyn Malmontano.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Maury Titleman.
And I'm Ken Addison. And I will forgive Alex for not following the rule of seniority.
Yeah.
I was here before Maury.
Yeah, well.
Just want to put that one out there. No, it's fine. Yeah, it's fine.
You were an intern.
I'll be the bigger man.
So
I mean, look, then technically...
I mean, if you cut Maury in half, he would have more rings in him than you would.
Then technically,
so
Jeremy should have been first, and I'd be somewhere in the middle, and...
Yeah. Fair.
All right. So, hey, we record this thing once a week, every Wednesday night. Sometimes Ryan's here, sometimes Ryan's not.
A little less often than normal, but we hold it down.
This time, Ryan and Josh are not here. Even though they both live in two separate places, they are now in the same place. But more on that in a couple minutes.
So if you hear any
they
news
may
stories...
be encountering a real kebab for the very first time.
Yeah, it might be.
By a guy that's 90% hair and doesn't speak a word of English, but can perfectly understand drunk.
Sounds ideal.
All right. Yeah, pcper.com/subscribe is where you can give us a name and an email, and we will send you a friendly reminder for when we're about to start either this podcast or any other live stream that we happen to be doing during the week. pcper.com or patreon.com/pcper is where you can. Hey, we broke 401, wasn't it? We were trying to get to 400.
Yeah.
Last week.
Good job, us.
We managed to make it. Patreon.com/PCPer is where you can help us pretty much keep the lights on, pay the rent, stuff. Bring you the amazing and awesome content that we strive to do on a continuous basis. All right. Next up, the PC Perspective Meetup, which Ryan has begged, implored, etc. me to remind all of you.
Your audio just fun.
Whose audio?
Hi.
What just happened?
Hello.
Hello?
Hello. Can
Jeremy?
anyone hear me?
I don't think he's sitting that still.
Canadian packets.
No.
There we go.
Yeah, what was that?
That was apparently UDP getting upset at me for some reason.
Oh.
Which
Okay.
is weird because UDP isn't supposed to.
He usually doesn't care.
All right.
It's not supposed to.
We'll just
Luckily, that was a pretty good cut spot.
Yeah.
So just start at the laptop and we're good.
Yeah, exactly. Do you need to switch back to the... Oh, okay. All right. So, PC Perspective Meetup in London, sponsored by ARM, where you can possibly win a free Chromebook. That, folks, London, it happens to be where Ryan and Josh are currently. And tomorrow, or probably today if you're listening to this during the usual time it goes up.
Or right now.
Or right now, maybe as you're listening to this.
It's tomorrow there right now.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, wait. Oh, crap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
So later
think about
tonight, Alan. Yeah, so later tonight in London.
Oh, wait. Okay, so what time is it there right now? Like 3:30 in the morning?
Yeah, it's like 3:30 a.m.
Well, so 7:30 p.m. over there time
Yeah.
is when you will find Ryan and Josh sitting in a dimly lit booth at the Momentous Bar inside the Cumberland Hotel, located in Great Cumberland Place, London. All right.
Well, look at this Chromebook contest. There are only 2,200 entries. You got a great chance. You should just enter it.
Yeah. Do you get even a better chance if you go to the thing? Is that what happens?
No, you get to play with them though. Ryan's bringing them, so you get to play with them and check them out.
So you get to play with them before the winners get them.
Yeah, you could. I don't know.
That's
what you could do.
That's sort of like as if you won the contest.
You could pretend you won the
briefly
contest
for just a moment. You can take a selfie with the laptop, and then,
or you could enter the contest and then maybe actually win it.
Yeah, and maybe actually leave with the laptop. Wouldn't that be cool?
Do you really want it after Josh has already played with it, though?
I mean,
for the collector's value.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We get him to sign it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say what. I'm not going to say what media he will use to sign it with, but
DNA pen.
yeah, exactly.
10-15.
All right.
I mean,
So we'll see how that goes with Ryan and Josh tomorrow. I'm sure we'll hear.
Let's place a bet.
Okay.
Over or under 10 people.
That's tough because there were an awful lot of people complaining that it was far away for them where they lived like 2 or 3 hours away.
It is a Thursday. So, I mean, like,
Yeah,
if you got work the next day,
That is true.
You got to travel 3 hours, right?
That is true.
I'm going over. I'm going over 10.
Think it's going to be over 10? I think it'd be over 10. I'm not sure how much.
You're also underestimating the drinking culture of the UK, where they're
Exactly.
quite happy to travel 3 hours to drink for 6, and then just wake up and go to work.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, hey, let's get into it. Weekend review.
So, Alan,
Yeah, Ken.
I hear there's some storage news this week.
Actually, no, there's no storage news this week.
Oh, thank God.
There's
All right. So, power supplies.
there's
Let's look at
storage.
power supplies.
No. There's storage reviews this week. Not news, reviews. We had the news on this probably 7, 8, 9, maybe 12, 15
Oh, you mean
times.
Optane launched?
Yeah, Optane
for the third
news.
time.
Yeah, exactly. Except this time, actual, review content on it. Starting off with the Intel Optane SSD DC P4800X, 375 gigabyte SSD. So that's 375 gigabytes of crosspoint installed into a thing that resembles like a P3700 or any of those half-height, half-length /U.2 data center style SSDs we've reviewed in the past. Except
Come on, don't be shy. Show it off for the camera.
I can't show it to you because we didn't have this here.
That doesn't sound like a review, Alan.
No reviewers had this product. We got to go look at it in person. They took myself and a couple of other of my esteemed colleagues back to the other end of the campus in the back lab in the back corner and actually showed us the systems that we were going to remote into. But the point of it was Intel is being super close to the chest on this whole crosspoint thing until the last possible second. And this was part of that. So at some point in the future, we might actually have a sample to mess around with and play with. But,
That'd be nice.
That would be nice. However, I will give Intel credit. They did the best that they could, given they were just look, we can't sample this to you yet. So
Can't sample it to you, but they let you remotely access a server with one in it exclusively for a couple of weeks.
yeah, for actually,
It's almost like they could have overnighted it.
well, yeah, but I think the issue was the items leaving the campus. I think that was what the issue actually was. Yet, that they're not allowed to leave the campus yet. There's even other companies testing their database stuff and doing development stuff, and they're all doing it remotely. Like the lab we went into, they had other machines there, and those guys are there were other Optane SSDs in other machines. So
was it out?
was what out? Is the product out?
Can someone buy this?
No,
I don't know if it's volume shipment yet, but it's it's been launched, but it's like any other launch, where they say it's launched, but it's not
Yet another
shipping in.
Optane launch where you can't.
Well,
the Papier lot.
It's not out.
I mean, it was a thing that had a final-ish firmware on it, and they basically just gave me free reign to do whatever the heck I wanted to do with that thing in that server. Just run whatever tests you want. It's have fun. If something goes sideways,
That
let
can't
us
be
know.
true.
and
You
we'll-
would have taken it apart with a screwdriver.
well,
That's a little difficult to do remotely.
yeah, my screwdriver, my iFixit kit extension does not go that far.
Damn it.
So anyhow, crosspoint,
Performance.
right? Crosspoint that we could actually test and see what the latency actually looks like after all of the hype train 2-year long, crazy hype train, right? So just specs, all the specs that we actually have been talking about for at least 3 or 4 weeks now, because there was a leak. Actually, it was 4 or 5 weeks ago. There was a leak on the spec sheet for the P4800X. And we talked about all the specs there, and guess what? The specs are all the same as they were on the spec sheet that was the leaked spec sheet. Okay, so you're talking 550,000 random read IOPS, 500,000 random write IOPS. Your typical latency is quoted as less than 10 microseconds. Compare that to any other type of SSD where latencies typically run about 100 or more. So that's kind of significant. Like, cut your latency down to 1/10 of what it was before. They did not put sequentials in their released official specs, but it's in reality, it's like around 2 gig per second. This is a PCIe 3.0 by 4 SSD. It should be going higher than 2 gig per second, but that really boils down to just the controller can only do things so fast. So in order to make the latency so low, they couldn't make the controller additionally complicated so that it could just like reach the, saturation of all the things kind of speeds. They were going for, let's get the latencies really low at all costs and keep the IOPS really high relatively.
Like you might do for an enterprise part.
Well, an enterprise part specifically tailored to be a low latency thing, not just like a mass storage thing, right? So to walk through this guy, I guess we could just go to like that 4K random page. Third page in. So first chart, we're basically just looking at one line for each queue depth. And you might notice there's only 5 lines on that chart, which means that you have queue depth 1, 2, 4, and 8. And then anything higher than 8, it's just saturated. Which is pretty phenomenal considering NVMe parts typically don't saturate until you get all the way to queue depth 256. So that's pretty amazing right there. The next chart down, I compared the first 3 rungs of queue depth for the Optane part, which is in blue on that chart right there. Compared them against the P3700, which is Intel's fastest NAND flash SSD, and the Micron 9100 Max, which is Micron's fastest NAND flash SSD. And so that's queue depth 1, 2, and 4 for those 3 parts. And if you notice, Optane at queue depth 1 is pretty much walking all over the other parts at even queue depths up to 4 for almost the entire span of the performance results there. So it basically is just making fun of the flash stuff. All right, we can do one more chart on this page. Next one down. And that's just showing the queue depths all the way up to 256. And you'll notice that the Optane part basically just ramps up rather quickly, levels off at queue depth 16, and then just continues to just basically everything flatlines after that. The 9100 Max manages to pass it, but it has to get up to queue depth 128 to do so. Yeah. So not many enterprise workloads.
That's not going to be easy to do.
No, not many enterprise workloads will be able to push an SSD into a queue depth that's that high. Really. So that page kind of makes the point on the random stuff. Next page, quality of service, we could talk about for a minute. So quality of service, when you look at, and this is like the same argument goes for latency percentile, quality of service, all that stuff. You want these lines to be as vertical as possible and as far to the left as possible. First of all, I had to add a decade to the axis of this chart. Otherwise, the lines would have run off the chart to the left compared to the way that we have normally presented these charts in the past. So basically, yeah, it's really dang fast. Second part, it's super, super consistent. Those lines are almost vertical. Those are going through the various numbers of, nines, various higher and higher percentages of consistency requirements. So looks pretty dang good. Next chart down, there's only one number to look at on that one, and that is if you look at the 50%, the second column over from the left, 50 percentile, queue depth 1, it is averaging 9.7 microseconds latency on random reads. So, and it also did that, I didn't put 70-30 results in here, but it also was less than 10 microseconds for 70-30 mix. When you do random writes, it creeps a little bit higher than 10, but it was good enough for me to consider that, yeah, Intel is meeting their spec where they claimed that it was, typical is less than 10 microseconds. So it did it for us. One more chart on this one. Go to the next one down. Ken. So there's your first 3 rungs again. Queue depth 1, 2, and 4. showing quality of service of, Optane in blue, and then the other two SSDs in green and gold, same as before. Yeah, it's one full decade across to the left. So, the NAND flash stuff is running on the order of 100 microseconds. Optane's running on the order of 10. Pretty significant, right? You're basically just cutting things down, making, significantly lower latency to do pretty much anything you want this SSD to do. Should we go through the bridging the gap, I guess? Yeah, we probably should.
Yeah, we should probably talk about that.
So on the next page, Intel had this slide that was just trying to demonstrate, just with numbers, where Optane sits in the whole landscape of hard drives all the way to the cache on side of a processor, for example. And I thought the numbers were kind of like, yeah, they're numbers and that's all good and nice. Let's use our latency percentile thing and, to our advantage here and actually plot some stuff out. So I blew the dust off the floppy drive, blew the dust off the zip drive.
You didn't feel good just estimating the latency of a floppy drive.
No,
I wanted to measure it. I
wanted the actual, and you can even see that there are steps in the floppy drive's chart there, because the floppy drive seek time just happened to
3.5 inch or 5 1/4.
3.5.
You didn't do your due diligence.
I don't have a 5 1/4 actually.
For shame.
Yeah, sorry. So all those things on the right side of that chart there are all starting with floppy all the way at the far right, and then I'm going to a Velociraptor at the left edge of that cluster on the right side there, and you'll notice that your DRAM is the bright blue line on the left edge there. Pretty big gap of latency between those things. So, before you had SSDs in your system, it's 100,000 times the latency between your DRAM access time and your hard drive access time. Pretty nasty. So then you go down to the next one, and we can add in SSDs. So they started where that dashed gray line started. That's where the early SSDs started out. As far as latencies, that gave you about 100x or 10x improvement over hard drives. And then you got another 10x on top of that, just as all that technology matured, and you kind of got to where we are today in the 100 microsecond range compared to 10 millisecond range for hard drive access time. Next chart down is where this Optane memory or this P4800X falls into place, which is yet another 10x improvement over the NAND stuff. And you'll notice that there's only one more 10x improvement left before you've hit DRAM speeds. And then I snuck in one more chart, which was the fastest RAM disk software I could find, which almost gets you that extra 10x in between those two. Yeah, it's not perfect.
Yeah, I mean,
it was running like 2.5 microseconds instead of 1 microsecond. But, it just gives you an idea of that's about as fast as Windows can handle a storage thing via the typical ways to talk to a storage thing. So to get much faster than that, you pretty much have to start, making serious optimizations to Windows and just the way that these things work.
Where does high bandwidth memory fit into this? HBM2.
HBM2 was probably going to have latencies that are because the benefit of HBM is the throughput more than the latency, right?
I'm furiously Googling. I think it has a significant latency improvement too.
Yeah, it's both.
Well, because what I used
depends on the implementation, because it's not just the HBM. It's got to talk, and we know what kind of limitations those have.
Because I know that HBM gives you a very wide bus, right? But I don't know that necessarily means that it's able to, select a row, an address, select a row in a column, any faster necessarily. The way that I figured out what the DRAM latency is on that bridging the gap chart is to take I think it was a Skylake CPU specs and figured out how many clocks the CPU side requires to actually handle talking to DRAM. And then I think I used something like 51 nanoseconds as your typical DRAM access time, actual like CAS, if you figure out all the typical latencies of like DRAM in general, right? So I basically was adding some CPU time and some actual DRAM time. And I don't know that an HBM would necessarily be so much faster. And again, we only see an HBM talking to other things, not directly to a CPU, right? So not necessarily an apples to apples, comparison there.
That makes sense.
Yeah. One other point worth bringing up is that we did this testing in a different way that we normally do testing. And that is because of IRQs. Know what IRQs are?
Yes, Alan, I know what
You know what IRQ is? Oh.
They're what made my Sound Blaster not work.
I did
That's
never
true.
have
That's
to
true.
I did never have to assign IRQs, but yes and
Oh,
You didn't ever have to?
lucky
No.
You
kid.
never felt that pain?
I never felt that pain.
Oh,
I know.
dear
You can
boy.
just take away my nerd card.
Dear
I'm
boy.
nothing,
All right.
but
So,
Well, it's okay. I've never 3D printed anything yet, so you got me on that.
well, here's what happens in a system today. When you ask an SSD or hard drive or whatever for a piece of information, right? The operating system, handles that request from your program that's trying to get the information, right? And then it passes it along. And if it's not ready immediately, which it's not going to be, right? That command gets queued, which comes into the whole QDEF thing that we always talk about, right? But the CPU doesn't just sit there and like stalled while the thing is getting the information, because it's, it's Windows, multi-threaded. You can do other things with your CPU. It would be really crappy if you're, especially in the old days where you had like 1 or 2 CPUs in your system. If you tried to read something from your hard drive, and like everything just like pegged at 100% while you were trying to read a file, that would be crappy. Some of you folks might actually be familiar with occasions where you did peg your CPU out of the blue trying to read stuff from your hard drive, and that's because something went sideways with your hard drive controller or your hard drive, or your like IDE cable or something was a little flaky, and Windows reverted back into what was called PIO mode, which is programmed I/O, which, by the way, is polling.
Yep.
Funny story. So in programmed I/O mode, you actually would have had slightly faster response times in those systems
If your CPU could handle it.
if your CPU was going fast enough, right? Your CPU wouldn't be
the
doing
CPU
anything
wasn't.
else. Your CPU wouldn't be doing anything else fast at all because it was pegged waiting on the storage, right? All right, so to avoid all that stuff, things started using DMA. DMA is direct memory access. So basically it says, all right, storage thing, I want this sector. Go get me this sector. Tell me when you've got it, right? So then the hard drive controller, all that stuff would send the information directly to memory. And then once it was there, it would initiate an interrupt request, get the CPU's attention, say, hey, I got your stuff. It's over here at this address, right? So that takes time. That process of getting the CPU's attention, it has to like do a context switch, it has to switch over, and all this other stuff has to happen. And then it completes the request. On a Windows system today, modern Windows system, that takes about 4 or 5 microseconds.
that's a significant portion of
10 microseconds.
yes.
Yeah. It's like 50% more.
Yeah, no, that
Yeah.
works out.
Yeah. Now, you didn't notice, even for like a NAND SSD, you didn't really notice it that much because 100 microseconds, what's another 4 or 5? Right?
True.
Especially since you don't want the CPU just spinning at 100% during the 100 microseconds. Like, that'd be kind of silly, right? However, the challenge today is that when things are going this quickly, we need to figure out a better way, right? You don't want to use...
Gotta be a better way.
There's got to be a better way. You don't want to use the DMA thing or the typical queuing thing that was used before, because now the latency is significant compared to how fast the thing is that you're talking to. But if you do polling, which we did in this review, which actually did peg CPUs while it didn't peg all of the CPUs, but as many threads as we had accessing the storage ended up being a pegged thread, basically, as far as like your CPU usage. Now, I was doing that to emulate the end game, which is presumably there would be some form of like a hybrid polling method where you don't necessarily run the CPU at 100% all the time. You tune a driver so that you know, like, this thing responds in 10 microseconds. All right, we'll have the driver just kind of pause for like 9 microseconds, And then for that last microsecond, we'll constantly ask. We will poll the device to see if it's done, right? Something like that. So to kind of, envision where the end game of what the driver would probably look like for this thing, since we were just testing it with a standard Windows driver, that's the kind of testing we did. And I did testing both ways. And I actually have a QoS chart that Ken is showing right there, which shows what the latencies looked like with polling on versus using the interrupt request method. And then the next chart down shows the actual latency. And if you look at the first 50% bin there, it is exactly 15 microseconds for a read request. So we went from like 9.7 to 15.0. And all of that is just the amount of time it takes for like the Windows kernel, the CPU context switch, all that stuff, all those gears to move and, complete the IO in the old way. So challenges that we face with, a new...
It's too fast.
This is too fast. It also caused me to, I think, let's just say that every latency-related bug in my testing, which might have only added a microsecond or two here or there, and, would have never been noticed on any other thing we've tested with that suite in the past, every one of those bugs was squashed. And now, thanks to this thing, my code is optimized as heck. Anyway.
All right. I'm cutting you off.
Yeah, so $1,520 for 375 gig.
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
Don't buy this thing unless you have a workload that absolutely needs it in your server.
Yeah. But if you have
listen
1,500...
carefully, Ryan just woke up screaming in the UK.
Yeah.
He had a nightmare where SSDs were just not priced right.
That's $4 a gig. It seems like a lot of money.
Yep.
X25M cost me like $7 or $8 a gig when I bought that, though. So,
yeah, it's a bit different world than the X25M.
It is. But this is
simpler days.
This is the first major thing to come out that is using a brand new type of storage technology.
Yeah.
So it seems, in that context, it seems kind of like a bargain.
Is it a disservice? Like, is calling this an SSD, which it is, it's a solid state disk
It is
drive.
a solid state drive, yes.
Should they have come up with a different term, maybe?
No, SSD is the blanket term. It's just that, and I've had to start qualifying how I'm writing about these things because NAND SSD is like it's NAND flash or just an SSD with flash in it or something. This new one,
we're already
SSD.
like it's a PCIe NAND flash or it's an M.2.
It's a PCIe NAND NVMe SSD.
I know.
Yeah, it's already getting ridiculous.
Yeah.
Could have called it something different.
Yeah, well.
You mean like Optane?
This is Bob.
No.
Well, I mean, they're already calling it Optane. Optane's in the name. It's one of the many titles associated with this
the
thing.
Intel Optane SSD DC-P4800X.
Yeah.
That's a bad name.
Yeah,
V2.
I know.
They had to sneak the X in there, even though they've never put an X in any of their other storage product names, just because it's Crosspoint.
It's like 20 years from now, that'll be like the sequel to P90X workout routine, right?
Oh God, no.
It'll be the one that the androids have to do to work out to buff up, right?
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
You know what's not like an Optane SSD
What?
DC-P4800X?
What?
This power supply.
A
by
PSU
Riotoro.
Onyx.
Yeah.
I bet it could power that SSD, but
I bet it could.
yeah. Who did this one? Lee?
Of course.
Of course.
And honestly, I mean, scroll down just a little bit. I like the look of the back end of this power supply. It's compact. I'm used to seeing them spread out all the way across. Right?
Yeah.
For the modulars. This one, they just sort of stuck it all in, which makes sense from an electronic point of view as well. You're not spreading everything out. You're running it straight through. So it's going to annoy a lot of people because it's square, it's black, and it's plain. But hey.
Sometimes
do you
that's
really need a
exactly
fan?
what you want.
Exactly.
I don't want my power
He
supply to
cracks
stick
it
out.
open. I mean, when he cracks it open, it's a kind of a hash of capacitors. I mean, a lot of it is good stuff like Chemicon or Rubicon, but you got some TPO and other stuff in there as well. But the layout, because of the way that they sort of decided to do it, it's open. Like, that fan is going to be able to move a lot of air through there without a lot of turbulence. It kind of makes sense to me.
All right.
And I mean, hey, who doesn't like staring at the inside of a PSU?
I always love staring inside of PSUs, especially when they're on it.
But he-
Yeah,
Oh,
Ken likes sticking his fingers in
absolutely.
fans
Who needs RGB when you got sparks?
and
But
blood.
he did his usual brilliant torture test of the thing, and it came out extremely well. Except the and it's not awful. It's just the single 12-volt design. It wobbled a bit. It was still fully within ATX specs, but it wobbled a bit more than we've been seeing some of the other ones. On the other hand, you're rippled, wobbled, wibbled, timey-wimey type stuff. But $650 or 650 watts for 65
Whoa.
bucks.
Okay,
750
that's
watts
much
for
better.
75 bucks. You know,
It's 10 cents a watt.
It's
Oh,
10 cents a watt.
Are we rating them this way now? Ryan, quick, call Ryan. We've hit 10 cents a thing.
Yeah,
It's
Ryan wants
watts.
one
but I mean, if you're
gigabytes.
not looking to blow, $100 on a 650 watt power supply, which most people when they're doing a 650 really aren't,
Yeah.
unless they need the LEDs and everything fancy. It's a nice standard PSU that's going to do everything you want it to. And with a 3-year warranty, if it's going to go bad quickly, you're covered. If it's going to go bad over time, chances are it won't be 3 years. It'll be significantly longer. So overall, it seemed to be like a decent value priced PSU that doesn't really cut back on a lot, apart from aesthetics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think this is in the bunch of power supplies that Lee dropped off at the office because he was tired of storing. So I think it'll probably get some use here pretty soon. I'll put it up to no good.
I think Lee got a much more space efficient end of the deal than Sebastian.
Yeah. Yeah. Power supply.
Well,
is a little
Sebastian's got a
easier.
lot of empty cases. You can just slide them in the cases in Sebastian.
True.
Those power supplies he brought, were they in boxes or were they just like all thrown into a box?
They're in boxes. Lee
Oh.
is very particular about repackaging his products.
Oh, wow.
And I appreciate that.
That's impressive.
And when you open them up, they're like new.
Oh, with all the cables and stuff associated
yeah.
with the power. We should keep those the way they are, just so that we know where the cable. Because we have like a shelf with a bag, like with bags of power supply cables.
They're semi-labeled.
The kinda, yeah.
No, they're not.
They've got gaffer's tape labels on them.
Yeah, with like PSU.
No.
No,
No.
they're like silver Sharpie on gaff tape.
It's just
But
like
the silver Sharpie is actually some semblance of what the name of the power supply is, but
not the best system.
then you have
I'll
to
give
find the
that.
power supply and hope it's actually named, like with a name on it that it matches what's on the. Yeah. Anyway, that was my dilemma. All right, moving on to another thing that a power supply can power. EVGA GeForce GTX 1080 Ti SC2 with ICX technology, and you thought that Optane thing was a mouthful.
It's got speed holes.
It's got speed holes. Is that what the ICX technology is supposed to be this time?
No, ICX is EVGA's sort of next generation cooler technology. I think they launched it with just the 1080 a couple months ago.
Yeah, because Ryan did a separate piece on that.
Is this one of the ones that has the extra temp sensors and all on it also?
Yeah, it's got like 9 thermistors integrated into the board.
Yep, it's got a bunch of temperature sensors, and I think did they split the heatsink on this one as well? I thought maybe.
I'm not entirely sure.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, there was one we were looking at where the heatsink was basically divided,
Yeah.
and so like one fan would run independent of the other fan. I'm not sure if that was this guy or not, but
No. This one's just got a lot of blowholes in the back.
okay. Well,
And on the
so
back plate as well.
I'm trying to figure out which
Literally, there's hardly any metal on the back.
which part of the label denoted all of the extra temperature sensing. Was it the
That's
SC?
the ICX.
Oh, so it was just the ICX.
Yeah,
part.
Yes.
SC2 is sort of the
Super
positioning
clocked.
in their stack.
Yeah.
There's the FTW 3.
Yeah.
It will be above this that isn't out yet. So this is kind of the not flagship 1080 Ti, but it's sort of their custom design that's out right now.
And then they probably also just have a super clocked, just like SC, not with the 2.
Yeah, I don't know.
On it.
I don't know for the 1080 Ti.
EVGA usually has. Yeah, they usually have like
There is one.
3 or 4 different SKUs for each, for each version of a GPU, typically. So I saw when Ryan was playing with the previous version of this card, and I really liked all of the additions that they did on their why can't I remember the name of their tool? What's the EVGA overclock tool? XOC.
Really?
Yeah.
OC scanner.
Oh, Jacob will be so mad.
Hold on.
Where is it?
It used to be Precision X, didn't it?
It's Precision X.
Yeah, it's Precision XOC.
It's Precision
Okay.
XOC now. It used to be Precision X and then some version number, but
Okay.
like they replaced the version number and the name with just XOC. Maybe I don't
That's
know.
probably a bit better for brain.
It still has versions, but it's just not part of the like full title of the thing. But
Yeah.
I liked the additions they did to that, where you can actually, it shows you where the temperature sensors are on the PCB and like within the GUI of the interface, and you can look at what all the different sensors are doing, and it gives you just
I
more
think you can
granularity.
add your own and program it too.
Yeah, there's like just
Remember
extra
correctly.
bells and whistles, right? So maybe not for everybody, but if you're
buying a 1080 Ti, it
Yeah.
should probably be for you.
well, I mean,
That's kind of safe to say.
this does add
Oh no, you could buy one for me.
Fair.
this does add some cost compared to the other models. On the last generation, on just the 1080, I think it was something like $30 or $50 more for the card.
Yeah. I think it's less of a delta here. Let me go ahead and check in the review what the pricing is.
I don't think he really.
It's just $20 over reference right now.
okay.
Ooh, that's not bad.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's good.
It seems like kind of a no-brainer for me.
Yeah.
Okay, it's out of stock and a little
well,
bit more expensive
60.
on Amazon right now.
That's the problem, yeah, because it just
But even at the out of stock price, it's $50 more expensive, which is pretty reasonable for a custom card.
yeah. I mean, looks cool.
Yeah.
It's a nice looking card.
Please note that is not metal, even though it looks like metal.
It looks
That
like
is
metal.
plastic. It's high quality plastic, but don't buy this card thinking it's metal.
I mean,
That
you
would
know,
be awesome.
I only want it if it's pure chrome.
I mean, I would
There's
hope.
no reason for it to be metal. It should not be metal.
Yeah,
but
it doesn't
it'd
have to
kind
be.
of cool if it was metal.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of metal behind it in the form of actual heat sinks that are trying to remove heat. So,
Yeah.
you know,
And let's go full on and sharpen those fan blades.
yeah.
You know what else is made out of metal?
Oh.
This
Oh, jeez.
EK Supremacy MX CPU Waterblock that Moore reviewed.
Oh,
Man,
well,
I'm good at
there's acrylic on the top there.
Yeah, but it still has metal in it.
It's got metal. I
assume.
hope it's got metal in it.
Alan, it's not.
It's a pure
not
plastic water block.
Yeah, that's not a. So, I have some stories about the top that we'll get into later. Well,
Oh, wait a minute.
later.
Yeah, it's not acrylic at the very top. That looks like brushed aluminum, isn't it?
Well, okay. So what they did was they put a top plate on, a brushed aluminum top plate, and they screw it into the plastic or acrylic or whatever it is top plate. And so they have a cover plate that's screwed into the top plate, and then you can see the holes around it. They made holes around it so it doesn't impede the sealing of the fittings on there. Well, you can't see it because Ken's still showing the video card.
Yeah, sorry, my browser crashed. I'm trying to do some magic here.
That's fine. Yeah, so
Well, get
There were
back
some
up to 8
issues.
connections. Yeah. Sorry, Maury, keep going.
no, that's fine. There were some issues with this block. The biggest issue was with the top plate, as I was kind of hinting at before. Basically, because it's plastic, it's rather fragile. If it's even acrylic is fragile. Acrylic will crack. Palm, the difference, there's another There's another material called acetylene or palm, POM, not PALM, POM. That it's more forgiving, and it's got some give to it, so it doesn't crack as easily. The problem with plastic, acrylic, or any non-metal top is that it can crack, and you can strip out the fitting holes in the top. With this, once Ken gets the browser pages back up, we can show this. But in the review, I actually cracked the top. I kind of switch fittings out a couple times because I go back and forth when I'm testing, especially when I'm testing a couple of water blocks. This one I was actually testing in conjunction with another one, just running them all at the same time. So as I was switching the fittings between them, as I want to do, I will tighten the fittings down, and I happen to tighten it too much, end up cracking. I didn't know it cracked until it started leaking on the motherboard. Luckily, I caught it before it did any damage, but I basically had to switch out the plastic top with the metal top. The previous series was called just the Supremacy Evo, without the MX. That top is a perfect fit on this block, and that actually increased the performance of the block pretty significantly. I mean, the block is one of the highest performing blocks I've seen come across my desk so far of the current batch I've been testing on the X99 platform. So, it is a decent block. One of the nicer features is that it comes factory assembled from the company, from the manufacturer. So you buy an Intel block, it comes with everything assembled that you can use on an LGA 11 5X or a 2011 socket. Okay, so here's a picture. So Ken, if you can go to page 3 of the review, you kind of scroll to the bottom, like midway down, you'll start seeing pictures. You'll see a picture. There's a section called cracks in the top. It's about midway down. There's a picture with actually caught the pictures of cracks. Now keep going. Keep going. No. There you go. Okay, so these pictures here, you can actually see the cracks. I mean, it cracked along both of the insert holes. Yeah, it cracked. I mean, it cracked all the way through. So, the way that they built this, in order to kind of reinforce it, it's not a solid piece of plastic. It's actually it's a pretty thick top plate of plastic, and they have ribbing along the inside to give it strength. The problem is because it's so thin, and if you put enough pressure on it, it's going to crack. So you see that's what happened there. It's so if you scroll down a little bit more, you can actually see. I actually have some pictures of the plastic versus a metal top. The difference between them isn't that great. You can see the metal top; it's the same thing. It's a thin plate. Now see how the metal top is thin on top. That whole inner chamber there has the plastic. It has a ribbing on the plastic one. So the plastic one's actually a little thicker. The bottom page. That's why the plastic top is a little thicker than the metal one, because it needs a little more room for that reinforced ribbing. But once I switched the metal top in, worked great. The only other downside of this cooler is that when you use it with an 11, with a Kaby Lake or Skylake or any of the 11 5X sockets, you actually have to remove the motherboard backplate and put their backplate in. It does not have an overplate like a lot of them do. So you basically have to take the socket apart and hope you don't bend any pins in the process. That was, besides the top cracking ordeal, that was one of the bigger negatives in my opinion. Ken, actually, if you go to, let me see here. If you go to page 2. Sorry, I'm flipping you all around here. And then scroll down to the Z170 board mount. The last picture in that, you can actually see the backplate. Yeah, and that's actually showing the metal top on there. So see the backplate here. It's actually sitting on the surface of the board. I mean, you can see the three mount holes on the inside. That's where it's actually screwing directly into or the screws from the socket on top, or the socket plate on top, are actually screwing into the hold down plate. So it is a little involved. It does give you a little more hold down force, but it's not something I like to do. I mean, I've had my fair share of
So you're saying
socket.
So you're saying this backplate does not just do the typical 4 holes that everybody would be used to. It does the 3 additional that actually are holding the physical socket to the motherboard, like
Yes.
those reinforcement screws, right? So you have to remove those screws, remove whatever plate came from on the motherboard in the first place, and replace that entire plate with. So I mean, I guess it's added complexity, but yeah, I mean, it should reinforce a little bit more, like with one solid plate handling the socket and the cooler on the other side of it at the same time.
Yeah. On the X99, you didn't have to do anything like this. Luckily, that one did the screws or the hold downs screw directly into the socket plate. So that was nice. But it's a nice block. I mean, if you go, I'm going to make you shift pages one more time, Ken. If you go to page 5, the comparison testing page, you can actually see the numbers. So the stock numbers aren't as impressive. It's basically the stock numbers. They're about the same across the board for everything. It's really the overclocking numbers that you really start to see the performance of the block. So scroll down to the next chart, Ken. It's overclocking. So there you can see, I mean, across the board, the max core average, and even the all core average is 2 to 3 degrees lower than any of the other competitors. It was quite a cooler. A lot of that, I didn't get solid numbers before I cracked the acrylic top, so I wasn't able to get those numbers. These are all with the metal top, unfortunately. I did do testing in both configurations, though, so you can have that kind of comparison where it's either parallel or perpendicular to the memory, basically, or the port plane. So, but it with the metal top, it performs very well. And I mean, if you added the acrylic top, it would probably may decrease performance. Probably, I mean, I wouldn't think more than 4 or 5 C. I mean, it's significant, but not very significant. This is a really good cooler. So price wise, it runs about what was that? It was about, I think it was about $55. I think $55 to $60 off of Amazon or Performance PCs. The metal top that I had to replace it with was another 16 or 17. So it's not a bad little cooler. The one, as I was saying, it comes factory configured for the for whatever sockets. You can buy an AMD version or the Intel version. You can switch the plates out, but in order to switch the plates out, like if you have the Intel version, you want to go to AMD, you have to physically take the cooler apart and replace replace the mount plate. The mount plate is physically embedded in the in the cooler itself. So, but yeah, it's a nice little cooler. So,
all right.
Yep. So, and it got a silver, because of its performance. So,
in a water cooling related tangent, I've been thinking about this lately. I think I'm going to put it out into the universe. I haven't told Ryan about this yet.
Uh-oh.
I've never done a custom loop.
Okay.
That seems like something I should check off the list, right?
Sure.
For my nerd cred and working here.
We got all the stuff.
Yeah, you got to print it out, though.
Oh, God, no. No.
I challenge you to 3D print all of the connectors for a custom water cooling loop.
No.
Because, 3D printed parts are absolutely
come on, the tolerances are fine
right?
enough. You could do a screw, right?
No, don't just print the 3D connectors. 3D print the whole thing.
Yeah,
Oh, the
I want
block.
3D printed
Yeah,
lines. Yeah, everything.
Yeah.
Screw that acrylic bending with all the heat and all the stuff you gotta do.
You can print PETG.
Well,
That's what that is.
Yeah.
that's true.
And that's what
true.
that is.
Yeah. So I'm gonna put this out into the universe, and I don't know, comment if you think it'd be a cool thing to sort of have like a beginner's guide, because like I've never even really cared that much about it. Like I know sort of the basics, but I wouldn't really know necessarily where to begin in buying these components and sorting these components.
Technoscope says you should water cool Optane.
Sure. Someone sold an SSD 750 block. That might fit.
That's true. It might.
All right. Anyway.
Zip ties. Ken, zip ties.
Speaking of
Zip ties work real well.
But speaking of a product with the name Optane that, I don't know, may have come onto the market a little bit too late, but then again, you need a cabby core to run it. What do we think about this boost? The 16 or the 32 gig boost?
Don't call it a. That's not its name. What are you just making up names?
Optane memory is
No,
also a
it's-
bad name, and
it's
for a completely opposite
I'll tell you,
reason.
memories. It's a hard drive boost. It will boost your hard drive.
It's a hard drive cache.
unforeseen performance level.
You just don't want to say cache.
Well, tonight it's cache.
Oh wow! Holy crap!
How did they?
Well, there's a bunch of Londoners over there that are doing cache. It's like I love the idea of this, and it's cheap. Like a $44 upgrade is not a bad thing if you blew all your money on a Kaby Lake and a new motherboard and DDR4 and that. But how have you spent that much money and you're still using an old hard drive?
Okay, so
You don't need to spend a lot of money to have a Kaby Lake system. You have to spend a lot of money to have a 7700K system.
So hold on. We haven't made
Okay,
clear
fair
what the heck
enough,
we're talking about
but-
to the people listening on the podcast. Okay,
I
So-
threw the link up.
so
The audio people can catch up.
the audio people on the podcast don't just get the link. Like it doesn't come up.
Yeah, but how many times have we talked about this Optane accelerator? They know what's coming.
So Optane memory, which is the system accelerator thing that we talked about on like leaked roadmap slides months back from Intel's Crosspoint stuff. It's out. It's a thing that we have here. We actually tested it here, not remotely.
Ooh.
Yeah, they sent a system like a OEM-ish style system build, kind that you would expect to have this product installed in it. It kind of made a lot of sense with what they chose for hardware for the build.
Yeah, it was a lower end ASUS B250 board with a i5 7500
Yep.
and a 7200 RPM hard drive.
Yep. Western Digital Black, like 1 terabyte hard drive. Actually, might even be a higher end hard drive than you would get in a OEM build. Like
It's been a while since I've cracked open a modern OEM machine, but I'd imagine they're putting 5400 RPMs in there.
they
just
could
for
very well be.
reliability
likely.
reasons.
Yeah. So anyway, we had it here. It came with like Optane enabled and everything, which made it pretty quick system. But we wanted to make sure that we were checking the back and forth, and as far as like how fast is it if it came with just the hard drive? How fast is it if it had Optane memory enabled? How fast would the system be if you were to say do crazier things, like if you had a SATA SSD and you decided that wasn't fast enough, would Optane memory accelerate that noticeably faster or not, right? And then after all of those, how does that compare with just your standard like 960 Evo, among the fastest NVMe flash-based M.2 SSDs, right? So we did a bunch of stopwatch timing of things. There were many installs, uninstalls, back and forth, many repeated runs to make sure that the time actually made sense and was repeatable and all the stuff. So long story short, if you have a hard disk based system and you install Optane memory, it will bring the speeds in line with SATA SSD speeds, basically, for the majority of things. And I pushed it as far as doing some crazy things, even to the point of Ashes of Singularity, and that install was like, what was the install size on? Wait, Doom's like
70 gigs at this point.
Yeah, Doom's like 70 gig. Ashes Ashes is not quite that large, but Ashes has a notably horrendous loading process. Like when you go to launch that game, if it's on a hard disk, it is painful. It's more painful than booting a hard disk versus an SSD, like as far as differences in speed go. So launching Ashes, so as an example, launching Ashes Escalation. So there's Ashes of the Singularity Escalation is the game. It takes 75 seconds on a hard drive. So you launch the game and you're just sitting there for 75 seconds. Which is, pretty annoying, right?
Yeah. I don't like waiting for 75 seconds for anything.
Yeah, exactly. If you scroll down, is your thing working, Ken?
No, there we go.
Yeah, there you go. So once you've got it enabled...
the enablement process.
Yeah, so I caught that screen popping up like one time during a reboot after having just enabled it. You don't usually see the screen, but I thought it was interesting. Since this, it's tightly integrated with the chipset, so sometimes the chipset has to do some work during post before you go into Windows.
Sure.
Anyhow, so if you scroll down one more chart, you get to all the timed test results there. So Ashes was 75 seconds on a hard disk. Enabling Optane brought you down to 18 and a half seconds. Compared with a SATA SSD, got you 17 and a half. So we're only a second slower than a full set, SSD with nothing but flash, all solid state, right? Pretty noticeable difference. Now, if you want to go a little crazier and you accelerate the SATA SSD with Optane, it brings you down to 12 and a half. And then the NVMe SSD, like a 960 Evo, went 11 or 10 and a half.
So I'm sorry if I missed it, but did you go through like the steps you did? Like, did you just install Ashes?
No, I did all sorts of stuff here.
Like, how much stuff did you do in a sequence and then see what
to try to roll the cache
accelerated?
off?
Yeah.
So I actually did even more than I noted in the article after I posted the article, and still had a hard time rolling off the cache. But the example in the article is, and this is after we already had like Doom was already installed, Ashes was already installed, right? Mm-hmm. A couple other things, Steam was on the system, of course. That's how the other games got on there. Office was already installed on the machine, right? So I was just trying to mimic, like, what's your typical person that's actually going to use the system? Like, what are they going to do, right? But to go a little bit crazier towards the end of trying to do the situation where what we call roll off the cache. In other words, you've done so many other things that it's trying to cache new activities that you're doing, and then potentially some of the information falls off of the cache because, to make room for the other stuff you're doing, and then you go to reboot your system and suddenly it's going hard drive speed again, which is actually what we saw when we tried to use like Intel SRT, their smart response technology, which was the old version of their caching tech, which used a SATA SSD to cache a hard drive, right? This is like 8 years ago or something on, I think a Z97?
No, it was a Z68. Z97 is only two generations ago.
Yeah, it was Z68. Yeah. Okay. So, we had situations back then where stuff would roll off the cache if you didn't have to even try that hard. Presumably, Optane could be much smarter and cache much smaller sections of random data that's being read, because you don't have to worry about, 4K blocks or pages or any of that stuff. What you would have on like a NAND SSD. So in one session, I played a couple of games during that session, and then downloaded VMware to the system, installed it from the drive, downloaded the Windows 10 ISO from Microsoft, installed that within a VMware session that I had just created, and then booted that a couple of times. That, by the way, was booting as fast as the system itself booted, like the regular system would boot, right? So you're talking like less than 10 seconds to boot into the VM. And this is running on a hard disk system just with Optane laid on top of it, right? Normally those boots would have been like a minute, like within a VM on a hard disk. Like that would have been painful, usually, right? So did all that stuff, and then rebooted.
Mm-hmm.
Now the boot
was super slow.
No, it was still like 9 or 10 seconds or so.
That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, it wasn't as fast as it like as it was, if it's if you just rebooted the system and did only a couple of things and then rebooted again, like that would be like on the order of like 6 seconds, something like that. The system actually booted.
And I love your new benchmark.
Which one?
Uninstall Office 365.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I had to do it because I had to I had to time how long it took to install it. So presumably I was doing a bunch of uninstalls of Office, and I just was curious, like how long does it take on a hard drive, right? So, in a lot of those cases where you see, like a grouping that kind of doesn't scale with the storage changes that are taking place, basically all you're looking at is how much like processing time is taken for that thing to happen.
Not disk limited
time, right? So like basically to uninstall Office 365, like it took about 19 seconds worth of like processing time. Like the fastest storage thing in the system still took 19 seconds. So it's not like it was just hitting the disk.
Most of it's talking up to Microsoft. It's over your network. That's what most of the way of that one is.
Yeah. So just, just simple things like launching Word, right? Like boot into Windows, let everything settle out, which actually is kind of giving the hard disk system a little bit of a favor, since usually people will boot as soon as they see the desktop on Windows, they'll try to start doing stuff, and really the hard drive's still crunching away for like another 30 seconds to a minute, right? Well, even letting everything settle out took like 8.5 seconds to launch Word. Install Optane, 1.5 seconds. Like, that's crazy, right? The boot time was like 47 seconds down to 6. Booting from a SATA SSD was 10. So people with a SATA SSD that think you're all like, oh, I don't care about Optane. Well, if we put Optane in the SATA SSD system, it dropped the boot time down to 5 seconds. So it actually made it even faster. Faster than an 960 Evo in a system, actually, by a second. So now I'm not going to say like go run out and like you have to have Optane if you have a SATA SSD, because really the boot was like the major thing that's on advantage. Everything else was mostly a wash. But installing Windows 10 in that VM took, hold on, my chart thing is in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, took like 10 minutes to install Windows within the VM on a hard disk system. It took like 5.5 minutes to do it with Optane enabled. And it actually takes like the same 5.5 minutes almost like regardless of what solid state type of memory you're using. So it's like all of that time, that was 5 minutes worth of the system waiting on the hard disk to seek is basically what the thing was. And you eliminate all that with Optane, right? So we went into crazy detail on the rest of the review. I did all sorts of in-depth performance stuff. I even did like enterprise level stuff. Because just so happens the latencies on the 32 gig Optane memory part are actually almost a microsecond faster than that P4800X I was talking about. Because there's less of a controller in the way.
Yeah. And
there's only 2 dies, right? I did do client performance. We ran our new client testing suite on it, which does the burst accesses and whatnot and tries to better emulate like an actual person using a system. And if you look at, I would just go to the top chart there. That gives you the pretty good spread. First, start with your hard disk, which scores 136, which is abysmally low on this particular thing. SATA SSD scores like 15,000 in this random access test. It's basically like the typical IOPS you would see, so around 15,000 IOPS. 960 Evo scores around 19,000 IOPS. The hard drive plus Optane scores 42,000 IOPS, and the SSDs plus Optane scores 51,000. And then if you go really crazy and you were just going to try to install, say, I don't know, a Linux distro on like just the 32 gig Optane SSD, which you can do because it shows up as a regular SSD.
Windows XP64.
Yeah, XP64 or something. You want to put that on there. The score jumps. This is from the hard disk score of 136 goes to the Optane 32 gig solo product. 104,000. Kind of jumps you up a little bit. And then I went really crazy. If, say, you needed 64 gig instead of 32 gig, I put 2 of them in a RAID. The score actually drops because of overhead from the RAID controller. And this is the chipset RAID controller, which is notorious for being amazing at scaling. actually has a hard time with the latency because it adds a little bit of latency. But when you're adding a little bit of latency, a little bit is not much smaller than 9 microseconds, which is the access time of this thing. So we didn't test the 16 gig version, but that supposedly has a rating of 7 microseconds. Yeah, another couple, like you're talking like another 20% reduction on something that's already insanely fast responding. Pretty crazy.
And so to clear up some of the stuff about Optane compatibility, right?
Yeah.
It will, if you plug an Optane memory, that's a stupid name still. If you plug Optane memory into a regular PCIe M.2 slot, it will enumerate as a storage device, correct?
Shows up just like a 32 gig SSD.
Yeah. But to use the Optane caching software, you have to be on a
7th generation
Kaby Lake Core.
I bet it would work on a Pentium.
See, here's the thing. Yeah.
This is the tech sheets I've seen. It's all been Core i3s,
No, I know,
i5s.
I know.
That's because they just want to forget about Pentium and shove it in the corner somewhere. There's one guy that's really into the Pentium brand, and he keeps them going with decent products every once in a while.
So here's the thing.
I haven't seen a benchmark using a Pentium yet, though.
Well, do we have a...
Yeah, we have one.
And again, how many reviewers have a Pentium?
Okay.
Give it a shot.
Tomorrow, I'll plug one into that machine and see if Optane memory
It'd be a good thing to clear up.
We're pretty sure that it's the motherboard is the real limitation. So if you have like a,
and actually it's not only 7th gen. Skylake processors will work as well.
Per their own.
Yeah, because they were showing it off with the 6700K.
That was a typo.
Okay.
It was a typo on their slide.
Okay, never mind then.
Yeah. Sorry. That did add to extra confusion. Yes.
Yeah.
Even though it probably will work with a 6700K. Because what it's doing is all it's using is the storage controller part of the chipset on the motherboard, not necessarily dependent on, Kaby Lake specifically as a CPU to accomplish anything, right?
Yeah.
Same thing as like, certain versions of Intel rapid storage technology. Basically, it's your RAID firmware that's on the motherboard,
And
right?
Intel Smart Response Technology, the regular SSD caching solution, only worked on Z series chipsets, and Optane caching works on B and H series as well.
Yeah, it works on all of the 250? What's the number?
There's not a number. There's not a consistent number. All of the Kaby Lake chipsets. So Z270, B250. I don't remember what the H series one is. So this is very confusing.
Yeah, it is. It does add confusion to it.
They're probably gonna. One market they're gonna probably push this on is work laptops. I know at my job, the developers use Dell. Say, if you're a developer, you want at least a terabyte, maybe 2 terabytes, because you're always pulling down the code base and stuff. This solution, if the numbers, if it's as fast as the numbers are saying it is, this would be a very viable solution for that kind of laptop without having to spend, the $800 on a 2 terabyte SSD.
Yeah.
We were looking at the Dell Precision workstations, like the Dell professional equivalent of the XPS 15 the other day randomly, and for like a $1,400 configuration, it still has a terabyte hard drive in it and an empty M.2 slot. So
actually, that bloody well does make sense.
Yeah, but there is
if you've got a workstation class that's like RAID 0'd hard drives.
Next page.
That would actually make a bit of sense.
Well, 2 problems. One, Optane memory does not yet support overlaying on top of a RAID of hard disks.
I did not realize that.
Yeah. We asked them that flat out in Folsom when we were at the meeting there. And they were like, they want to do it. It's just, it's not there yet.
Pity.
Right. Number 2, Optane memory idle power draw is a little bit over a watt compared to like 2/3 of a watt for something like a 960 Evo, as an example. Talking idle power draw. So compare the blue is the Optane part, and then the red on that chart we're showing is the 960. So you can see the low points it's hitting during that auto run that we did just as the test, just to put some load on the drive. That's one point to consider. So you have nearly double the idle power draw of the Optane part.
Sure, but if you have a machine that has a hard drive in it,
Yeah.
you already have substantially higher power draw from the storage than an SSD. So the extra
they're
half
about
a watt won't matter as much.
No, I mean, hard disks don't draw a whole lot.
They draw more than an SSD, though, right?
Not more than like a 960 Evo.
Oh,
But that's not an equal comparison, really.
Oh, sure, because the SSD is going to get its stuff done more quickly and power down much faster. But the Optane thing, like, it's on all the time though, right? It's not really going to have like a sleep state, so to speak.
Yeah.
When you put the system asleep, sure, it'll go to sleep because it's non-volatile and it stores its stuff. It doesn't have to stay powered on, but it's drawing more power. There's more of like they call it a vampire load, right? A thing that just, always sipping on the battery, right? So one thing to note was Optane drew a little bit more. Now, again, we don't know what it does in a mobile form factor. If it's installed in a mobile system, maybe there's some other command the driver sends to it and it could spin it down. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
The other thing we saw when testing, again, on desktop, and we didn't know that it was doing this back when we were testing the P4800X and I was doing the polling thing, but the Optane memory driver, in every observation I made, it's polling.
So it's using a core.
So it pegs, so in that example right there, I was doing a sequential read from a relatively small area, small enough to where the driver just wised up and went, hey, I should just put this in the Optane and read from that instead, right? So it was giving me insane read speeds in the test I was running. However, while it was doing that, it was pegging a core. And it was the Windows system that was pegging the core, not my test app. Meaning it was a driver level saturation of a core. So
this has to be something they fix.
Well, here's the thing. It's actually not, you using the system, it's never going to look like that, right? The only way I could get it to look like that, I was drawing like something on the order of a gigabyte per second, reading a file that was actually on the hard disk, but it was being cached, right? Who's going to read anything that's at a gigabyte per second more than a split second, right? So it only saturates the core while you're doing the read or while you're doing the thing that's hitting Optane. Whenever it's any other time, it's not. It doesn't saturate a core at all. So just something to consider. That same exact test.
I think
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that the next sort of tests we should do with this, or at least, and by that we, I mean you, is using this in appropriate situations. Like, will it work with mobile? Will it work if you are sticking it on a Pentium class Kaby Lake processor as opposed to what they're saying it's going to be? Because honestly, if it's going to boost an $80 processor, all of a sudden, the hard drive makes a lot more sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. I mean, if you're building a machine for your mom or your sister, or your aunts. And
That's the thing. That's what this strikes me as like, first of all, that's kind of their target market in the first place.
Well, for the target market is people buying OEM
Yeah,
systems.
but I'm blowing 260 some bucks on a CPU.
But no, you could buy
for a mom and pop system, you're not blowing that.
But you could buy an i3 7300.
Yeah.
It's not a
fair enough.
CPU.
But that's like the upper level of
and there's a lot of folks since this article came out, like just looking at Reddit and whatnot, like there's a lot of folks that'll come out there and why don't you just use a SRT and an SSD? Well, you can. Like nobody says you can't.
Well, you only can on a Z series chipset.
But you only can on a Z series.
That's a stupid restriction.
And that's now it's a stupid restriction.
Fair enough.
Before it was like, hey, if you want the caching, you have to get the top tier thing.
Sure.
Right. Intel should probably relax that restriction at this point, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But
you know
but
what?
whatever. It's still an option. You can still do that, right? If you want, or you can, the other counter a lot of people say is, just SSDs are so cheap, just do that. But the problem is, mom and pops don't want to manage a C drive, a D drive, an E drive, and an F drive, and however many other, they don't want multiple drive layers. They just want to put the thing on their desktop, which is where they usually do, which goes to your C drive, right? They just want to fill up the documents folder with all of the family pictures ever, right? And that kind of thing is not an easy thing to do unless you just have a large disk. So if you can just easily put a cache over a large disk, which kind of like, I wish that it didn't require such a new motherboard, because this would make, $44 for the 16 gig version. It's like the perfect stocking stuffer.
Yeah,
right?
but the motherboard has to have an M.2 slot anyways, which is only kind of now.
Yeah, I agree. But it's just like, it's unfortunate, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
it's
like,
it's kind of an odd product. It's odd timing. Like, no one was really asking for this. It seems to do the job pretty well when it does do the job.
Yeah.
I think there's some more cool stuff we can do. I was just thinking about it. I have a laptop over there that I just finished reviewing that'll be up soon that has a 2.5-inch drive bay and an M.2 and is a Skylake system. I wonder if
we know if it's Optane? See, that's my other concern, is I don't think we could just throw it in any mobile system.
We can try.
We could try, but I think we need to, I don't think there's going to be proper firmware level support in the BIOS for these things until they're actually shipping and stuff.
Yeah. Only one way to find out.
Yeah, it's true. But $44 for the 16 gig, $77 for the 32 gig. That actually works out almost half the cost per gig of the enterprise part, which is surprising considering you're paying for, usually the price goes up in cost per gig versus capacity as you get to the smaller device, because you have to buy the device itself and then the amount of flash or whatever solid state or non-volatile storage is on there, right? So the prices are pretty low for this relatively, still really expensive compared to, 120 gig or 250 gig.
An SSD?
Yeah, just like a 120 or 250 gig SSD. Sometimes you can find those for prices on the order of this. I know I've seen 120 gig SSDs running around $60-$70 on occasion.
Yeah.
But again, is that enough for you to store your stuff, right? You could have, a dang 8 terabyte C drive in your system.
Yeah.
With this laid on top of it, download all of the Steam games. They won't all fit in the cache at the same time, but it'll only run slow the first time you run it recently, right? And then,
and that's another limitation, is we couldn't figure out a way to get it to, if you have an SSD installed, to accelerate your Steam drive.
Yeah.
It wants to do the OS drive.
Yeah, it's very
It's
dumb.
a lot of weird limitations that don't make a whole lot of sense.
It's not that it's limitations, it's that it's not configurable. They made it as simple as possible. I know that's a limitation. Yeah. But you can't, it would be nice if, especially in the rapid storage technology interface itself, because you can enable this in either way. You can install just the Optane app driver thing, which just has an enable disable button, and that's basically all there is to it. Or you can turn it on and off in the most recent version of the rapid storage technology driver. So you don't have to use the cheesy little Optane app. You can use the real one, which handles all your hard drive stuff and, SRT if you had it in your system and all the other things, right?
Yeah.
I wish they would just make it so that you could just point whatever you want to use as the cache to choose the thing you want it to cache. That's kind of how SRT used to work.
That'd be such a novel idea.
Yeah. Just I want to accelerate this other thing with this thing. I think it makes the most sense to only cache your OS drive with this in particular, because, heck, the boot time thing alone is pretty amazing. Not that people are just sitting there booting their system all the time, but with this, you might.
In fact, I try to not boot my system as often as possible.
Yeah.
All right, I'm cutting you off.
Okay.
Yet again.
Yeah.
I tried. It didn't work very well, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. We just got to see where this stuff goes as far as couple months time. Is it just in everybody's machine, or?
I thought he got cut off.
It'll go the same way as the Intel overclock cards you could buy at Best Buy.
Ha.
Yeah.
It may.
Oh well.
Anyways, how do you feel about water cooling your GTX 1080 Ti, Ken?
This is closed loop.
You don't have to print this one. But.
I think that would be against the whole spirit of it. But I think this would be way easier. And I think the frequency
is that.
It's odd seeing the memory frequency
so what is this?
in megahertz.
What is this? CORSAIR Hydro GFX GTX 1080 Ti.
It's just a block. It's just a block for the GPU. Looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's still a fan.
with an H55.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, it's an
if you're gonna
H55
go,
radiator.
Okay.
yeah, I mean, if you're gonna go this route, you may as well just buy a full cover block. I mean, you're not cooling the memory, you're not cooling the VRMs. They get hot too. No, the memory doesn't get as hot as it before, but you may as well just go the whole way. And
Well, I imagine the whole way is a bit more money because you have to. I mean, if you aren't already water cooling your CPU with a closed loop, well, with a custom loop, then you have to have a pump and a radiator and a reservoir just to cool your graphics card at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if you have something like an H80 on your CPU, this could be an interesting solution. Just kind of bolt in there. But like I said, it's not going to keep. It's not going to keep the You're not going to get the most out of water cooling your GPU, but I think it's a cool solution.
you'll get some. You'll get some. I mean, they probably have some kind of passive, heat sinks.
Yeah, I mean,
kind of
there's still a
solution for
blower
the memory.
fan. There's still a blower fan on the card for all the other components, not just the GPU die.
Mm-hmm.
So I imagine that spins pretty slowly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the point the other point I was trying to make too is that you have to take the card apart to put this thing on. So if you're going to do that, you may as well kind of go the whole way.
This is a product. This is a GTX 1080 Ti.
GFX, it comes.
You buy.
Oh, this is a okay. I didn't see that. I thought it was one of those.
It's not an add-on.
Yeah.
Okay.
They partner with MSI to make these Hydra cards. I think they've done it for a couple of generations now, but they're solutions you can just buy and throw
generation.
In. Yeah.
So this is like the EVGA
So
thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. No chance for you to crack it, Maury.
It isn't exactly the sexiest looking video card I've ever seen.
Well, no.
Well, that begs the question: what is the sexiest? Video
Slightly
card?
better than the reference.
Damn, you called me out.
Oh, I actually have that in reach. Because I was going to bring this up later, but hey, you want a sexy video card? Take a look at Ruby.
Nice.
Recognize
That
this
is nice.
poor old bastards.
It's a 4870, 4850.
It is indeed, and this poor thing has been running for me for not quite 10 years. I mean, it was what, 2007, 2008 these came out? But and when I mean it, it went from main gaming rig to always running SETI at home for the whole damn time, and it finally, it's not dead, but it's not stable.
Those were
I
damn
really
good
gotta-
cards.
They're
For the value
ridiculously
proposition at the
good.
time, like
Yeah. And the better part of 10 years at 100% loads, 24/7.
they just
And
don't
the
make
damn
them like they
thing
used
finally decided to start getting unstable. It's insane. Yeah, it's MSI.
Godspeed.
I'm just blown away. But yeah, it's finally going to be able to take a rest.
We can have
In
a
fact, I
fucking
might
funeral.
Pry it apart, clean out some of the dust, which you can see in the fan there. Replace some of the heat pad, and it might actually work again. But yeah, solid card. And sexy. Dead sexy.
What if you're not interested in buying a video card, Alan? What could you do?
I mean, I'm always interested in buying a video card.
Wow.
Talking about for the water cooling? Oh,
Really not paying attention here.
sorry.
Alan, what if your wife doesn't want you to buy a video card?
Well, my wife always doesn't want me to buy a video card. Yeah, so we're running a contest. See, this doesn't apply. You can't say, what if I didn't want to buy one? Because it doesn't apply to me.
I was talking about in generalities, the general we, if you will, the royal we.
The royal we.
Yes.
I see.
I don't want to buy a video card. I can't win this video card, but
But
Doesn't mean I
some
wanna buy one.
of our listeners could win an 1070 8 gig or a 1050 Ti dual fan. Are they both OC cards? Yeah, they're both OC edition cards. So grand prize 1070, second prize 1050 Ti 4 gig. And then the bigger one comes with Dawn of War 3, smaller one comes with Everspace Early Access. Not bad. 6,122 total entries. 9 days left to go.
Not bad for free.
Not bad for free.
Look at all those entries you can get. You can get so many entries.
Yeah, it's lots of entries.
Yeah.
9 different ways to enter.
They should.
And if you happen to be from Quebec, have him ship it to me. I'll totally ship it on to you.
Yeah, that's an interesting limitation there.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if
It's because of the packaging. The tongue troopers would get upset because there's not enough Francais on.
I hate it when there's not enough French on my boxes. That didn't come out how I wanted
No,
it to.
it didn't.
Anyways, please.
It came out perfectly.
Moving right along. BioStar. Mini-ITX AM4 motherboards. All right. Mini.
They have a 50-50 fun LED fun zone.
Excuse me?
They have a 50-50 LED fun zone.
Well,
It says it right here.
what does
in the
that
middle.
mean? Does that mean only half the LEDs light up?
I think 50-50 is like one of the names for those LED strips. Like I think that's one of the things.
It's just the 4-pin header LED things?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's
Still not explaining the fun zone.
I mean, RGB LED lighting.
It probably has a light switch rave for you.
Sounds like the fun zone to
It's
me.
like an automatic, cycle through all the colors. Hence the fun zone.
They have BioStar exclusive Vivid LED DJ with full RGB LED control.
I think something's lost in translation. It's similar to the ECS stuff. Some of the odd things comes out of ECS sometimes. Probably.
Okay.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, okay, a lot of times.
Yeah, most of the time.
Most of the time, yeah.
But Mini-ITX, Ryzen, I'm all about that.
Yeah?
We're waiting to finally see some Mini-ITX products because you could build some really cool small form factor, like you got a very cool small form factor 8-core encoding box or something like that.
Exactly.
Or if we want to do mobile streaming sort of thing, you no longer have to find that one weird X99 ITX board to get a lot of cores in a mobile machine. So hopefully we actually start to see some of these boards come out and have ITX options for Ryzen because that'd be pretty cool.
What is this Windows 3.1? Sorry, Windows 3.11.
The one true Windows. The one true Windows the way it was supposed to be done.
Is it for work groups?
It even emulates that little CRT look to it.
But Windows 3.1
It is literally
emulation is so passé.
It is for work groups.
If only
is.
there was something new to it. Like maybe if it was in VR.
Haha. It has sounds.
If only it supported. If only it was NT 351, the only true operating system.
Haha.
Well,
Great, we're all getting flashbacks now.
Yep.
and the connection was dropped. You screwed it up. You're gonna have to dial them back.
It's actually logging in.
Oh, Alan forgot one of the keys in the dial-up modem string.
Hold on.
Do you remember
Hold
those
on.
guys?
Can I actually uninstall Eudora within? This is going to be amazing if this works.
Hey, Alan, I have a little secret for my father-in-law.
Are you going Kermit or Z modem?
I'm uninstalling Eudora within Windows 3.1. Uninstall Shield came up. Oh man, somebody really did their homework on this thing.
Yeah, they did. And I believe Bob is still on that one as well.
Oh, thank God. Ding. The old Windows 3.1. Ding. Interesting.
Yeah, it's
That
Wait a minute.
liking that, Ken?
Wait a minute. There's a link on the desktop to MAME Pac-Man.
Well, you know.
How many layers deep are we going to go here?
Oh, here
This
we go.
thing's
It's
emulating
like,
a VR.
I don't know. Do you have to run it from a command prompt, or does it actually launch?
I think you should actually do this in VR when you get a chance, Alan. I think it would just be perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is actually the older DOS MAME prompt.
Oh, this takes
it
so long
is.
to boot. There's that Optane cache.
Should instead install an Optane in there.
I think I need to do this on a faster system since the sound was having a hard time playing seamlessly.
Also, it's driving this laptop a little crazy, so I'm going to exit out of that.
I mean, this thing is like emulation inception here. It actually fired up the Pac-Man machine.
Oh, well.
It's having a hard time. Yeah,
Does it have missiles defense?
I don't know. But the ghosts are taking forever to show up on the screen. So,
Yeah, well, they will. So, yeah, if you've got WebVR, and whether you know Windows 3.11 or not, you deserve to experience this.
yes, you do. You deserve to experience it.
If you think you hate Explorer now, just wait.
Just you wait. Just you wait.
Oh, I dig retro stuff. That's cool.
Yep.
All right.
All right. Well, one more bit of news before we move on, because they did ask.
FSP.
And FSP Group is it's decent power
They've been
supplies.
around a
I
long
mean,
time.
They're not forever. They've never been top of the line, but they've certainly never been bottom of the line. They're always a nice mediocre to damn, that's actually underpriced and I really like it product. Well, they're moving into coolers. They're doing the Windale. So the Windale comes in two different models. One has 4 heat pipes, and the other, the Windale 6, has, you're never going to guess, 6 heat pipes. Both use 120 mil fans, and I mean, no one has them yet to really do a review on it, but the PR looks pretty good. The fact that rating the 4 heat pipe at 180 watt TDP and 250 watt for the others is relatively impressive. Like, that's more than just about any CPU I can think of that you're going to want that much TDP for. So it's going to be interesting to see just how well these come out. As you can see, they've got the lights that they have to have nowadays, and 120 mil fan on both of them. So it's going to be interesting to see these. I'm expecting that we'll see a review unit in the not too distant future. And I'd really like to see a price. It would have been nice if you'd included that. If anyone from FSP is watching.
You don't need a price in the press release.
It's kind of handy. At a release date, it'd also be nice, but hey, who am I to complain?
It's just
Probably
the standard.
Hey,
but,
Jeremy,
you know.
probably figure it'll be $50 to $75. If they're claiming a 240 watt TDP on that,
Yeah.
it's probably a copper unit with aluminum body, aluminum radiator with copper heat pipes.
You are
And then-
absolutely correct, sir.
That's what it is. Yeah.
So 'cause that's
And
the only way. 'cause, I mean,
rubber
that's
grommets to
basically
attach the
not-
fans.
Yeah, I mean it's basically a knockoff.
Oh, Kyle bugged him. Apparently, it's 47.
$47?
The
47 is
low end one or
decent.
the higher end one?
Yeah, there was 2 different versions, right? It was-
Well, it's
I mean,
honestly, even if they peg the lower version one at 40,
Oh,
there
wow.
you go, 47 for the higher end, 33 for the lower end.
oh, wow.
That's what I
Nice.
was waiting for,
is
because
good.
that is decent. That is brilliant. Because I mean, if you're just introducing yourself to the cooler market, you want people to buy it, and you want to offer it at a decent price. And 240 watt TDP for under $50. I hope you guys get one of these soon, because I would like to see how it does. Because as I say, FSP has been around for forever. They don't aim for the stupid high end stuff, but they never produce anything that's awful. This could be
Yeah.
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
All right. Our software picks of the week. Yay, we've made it.
Well,
Almost.
Jeremy, what the heck is this? Oh, it's Mech Warrior. Sort of. Right? It's crashed
We are?
Ken's browser.
there we go.
Yeah, well, that's okay.
So you put
So,
an
yeah,
iPhone in your pants.
You do indeed. And you wear the Oculus on your face, because the thing about VR is we still don't have a good mech game.
Okay.
And, well, unless you go to one of FASA's events, and then, well, you've got a semi-decent VR game. But it costs a lot of money, and you're not going to be able to bring it home. So a couple of people have been working on it. This guy has been trying to figure out one of the main problems, which is if you move your head and you're not moving in the direction that you're facing when you got VR goggles on, you don't tend to be a happy human being.
Yeah. Oh, okay, I get it.
tends
So,
to upset yourself.
Ken, if you scroll down, there's
So
I don't know if it's going to play.
iPhone.
But is it not going to work?
So the iPhone sits in your pants on your chair, and by twisting the chair around, that gives the directionality to the Mech, leaving your head free to be able to look around the cockpit without tying it directly to the movement of the Mech.
Yep.
So, I mean, he's still working on the Mech game itself. The interface he's using to get the accelerometer info from the iPhone, he's posted up to GitHub, so you can play around with it yourself. It looks like a silly little thing, but I think it's a huge step.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you're buying yourself one of these fancy chairs with a whole bunch of sensors in it, and they're not cheap. You think the gaming chairs that Josh uses to drive his car around are cheap? Well, let me tell you. It's one of those, just, I read that and I'm like, how in the hell has no one ever thought of it? And good on you for thinking of it.
Yeah, it's true.
So I'm
Pretty
looking
cool.
forward to this, and it's really going to help. Because, damn it, I want a VR mech game.
That
I'll
would be
settle
pretty
for a new
awesome.
mech game. But
VR is how you have to get it. You'll go for that.
Alex, are you able to pull stuff up over there or no? Oh, okay. The laptop that was streaming the stuff to show on the video is took a big
Crash.
currently
Took a big,
updating for Windows Vista.
took a really big dump. Whoa. Holy crap. Is that what I
Oh,
linked?
You're still playing Factorio, are you?
Oh. All right, so yeah, as actually I like Alex's nickname for this game, which I hadn't heard until today. But Cractorio. Actually, Factorio. This is that game that I made it a pick, like, I don't know, a few months back or something. Because it was this crazy in-depth puzzle game thing, but they've been working on this like experimental update to it for months now, and this guy's been putting out a dev blog like every Friday explaining all these new features that he's adding to this thing. So everybody's just kind of like been like, okay, let's see the dang thing already. And came out, well, looks pretty amazing. Basically it's just it's sort of a real-time strategy puzzle automated factory kind of game. If you like puzzle kind of things, or trying to figure out, like, you know, I need this machine to make this part, but then there's like 3 layers back worth of other stuff that has to make other parts to make the final part. So you have to have like different assembly machines like all hooked up in a row and stuff. It's kind of interesting concept of a game, but they've really been torture testing this version, which is the experimental version is like 0.15 is the new one. as soon as it came out, people were torture testing it, streaming like multiplayer games where there were like 200 plus people all on the map at the same time, all doing stuff. And it was still like it basically wasn't lagging the simulation at all. Like it was running 60 frames per second steady, which is just the simulation rate for this game. So yeah, pretty cool. I put a couple links in the show notes for pictures of actually that second link in the notes. I don't know if you have it up. Or Alex, you're manually going to the links? Oh, okay. No wonder. Yeah. So I put a couple links in the show notes that go to one of the developers post some like screenshots of his map he was using to do development on the game and do testing, and it's just an insane mash of stuff all just plugged into a map. But what Alex has got pulled up there on the stream is they added nuclear power as a source of power for your factory in the game, which if you don't know about the game, you don't even know what that means, but it looks cool. They made glowy uranium stuff. And then you can take the fuel that's the uranium that you would normally use for the reactor, and you could take it and instead make weapons out of it if you want to. And cause a whole crap load of damage on the map when you're trying to blow up the NPCs that are like floating around trying to mess up your base. Anyway, it's a cool game. But yeah, take the word of warning. Alex doesn't call it Factorio for no reason, because it's pretty addicting. Anyway, Ken,
too.
What piece of crack do you have this week?
It's kind of crack. So, as you might know, the Raspberry Pi Foundation launched the Raspberry Pi Zero sometime last year. And it was a $5 single computer board that was essentially the SoC from a Raspberry Pi 1 and 2 micro USB ports, one you have to use for power, the other you can use for I/O, and a micro SD card slot for the OS and a mini HDMI connector. So in theory, all you need for a full computer. However, it's kind of missing one big thing, and that's networking. You can get like a micro USB to like an OTG adapter for smartphones. You can plug in a USB, either Wi-Fi adapter or an Ethernet adapter. But once you add on those adapters, you're kind of nearing the $30 price of a Pi 3, which is significantly more powerful and has built-in networking.
Okay.
Well, they fixed this. They fixed this now, and they came out in, I think, late February with the Raspberry Pi Zero W, which is a great name.
W for Wi-Fi?
Wi-Fi and Bluetooth.
Well, it sounds like an anime.
It does.
Next week on Raspberry Pi Y0.
So this is $10.
Yes. So this is $10, and it's the same thing. It just adds networking to it.
What's with their pricing on their page? Because that looks a little confusing. It's like one of them is $10 each. Okay.
So one of the issues with the $5 Raspberry Pi Zero and the $10 Raspberry Pi Zero W is that they're out of stock everywhere.
Oh.
So if you go try to buy it from someone like Adafruit, we expect to buy these things and they list it, it's just, they're absolutely impossible to find.
So they're actually charging more if you want more than one.
Settle down now.
Oh, okay.
However, the great thing is if you have a Micro Center in your area, Micro Center seems to always have these in stock.
Right.
And one of the ways they do that is that for quantity 1, the Raspberry Pi Zero is $5 and the one with Wi-Fi is $10. But if you want to buy more, it drives up the price.
Sure.
So it essentially stops people from buying a bunch and selling them third party on the internet because these are still difficult to buy things.
Okay.
So for $10, I walked in on Sunday and bought a Pi Zero W, and I put an OS on it, and now it's running the video behind us.
It's actually driving this.
Which used to be the job of an old MacBook Pro we have sitting in a corner, which is
with
just total overkill.
With a swollen battery?
We got rid of the battery.
Because it was a fire hazard.
Yeah, but this has been bothering me for a long time that we had a computer sitting in a corner doing this when it was something that could obviously be done by a Raspberry Pi.
Now it's a fire hazard that's just sitting on the
carpet. I need to tack it up behind the TV instead of just having it
It's literally like
sit on the floor
that
there.
Big. There's just like a $10 thing just doing that.
Yeah, but The Pi Zero was difficult to find any use for without networking, which added a bunch of costs. But for $10, I mean, you can do a whole lot with just this little, not very high compute, but this little ARM Linux box sitting wherever you want.
Do you set it to like a static IP? Like, how do you get it going? Like,
so you can edit a file. Like you flash the image to an SD card, you can edit a file and have your Wi-Fi config settings in there. Okay. And then you can just kind of scan your network to figure out where it is.
Just port scan your own.
Or just log into your router and see what device popped up on your Wi-Fi so you can get the IP and SSH in.
Gotcha.
But yeah. Or in my case, I hooked up to a monitor and I used a OTG adapter to hook up a keyboard. So I had a terminal. And it worked pretty well.
$10 computer.
Yeah. So microcenter is the key here. I think Fry's might do a similar thing where they usually have these, but I know at least microcenter has these.
How funny is it that you can actually have like, I mean, I'm sure that would run like MAME and do some simple games, not the crazy ones, but like
the best part about this is over the summer, Microcenter was running a sale where the Raspberry Pi Zero was $1. And they had it running for a couple weeks, and I worked nearby. So if like I'd run in to get something like some filament,
let me just grab another Raspberry Pi Zero.
Yes, I would literally just grab one because it was $1. I'm like, well, someday. And so I have a couple of those that I've never really used because no networking, but at least I found use for one.
How's their enforcement on that? Could you buy like a light bulb and a Raspberry Pi Zero, and then walk back in 5 minutes later and buy like?
You probably could. I don't necessarily know if you want to push it or not, but
like a thumb drive and a Raspberry Pi Zero, and then
yeah.
Huh.
Well, and one of the nice things about Microcenter is they have very cheap generic micro SD cards, so you can get an 8 gig micro SD card for like
a few
$5.50, I think.
Yeah.
So you walk out with both of them. You're $15 in.
How big is the image that you put on that thing?
4 gig is the minimum size.
Okay.
So yeah.
Sweet.
Wait, so the smallest image is 4 gig?
Yeah.
But it's a whole OS, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a full Debian OS. It's difficult to find. Like,
you can strip it down further, but like
there are probably images you could put on it smaller than 4 gig, but it's difficult to find a micro SD card under 4 gigs these days. So
right,
like you can't the smallest one you can buy at Micro Center is 8 gigs because it's $5.
That's true.
Yeah, so
We'll sell you a 4 gig. Special order it for $40.
Yeah, exactly. Starts to get expensive to get the smaller capacity.
Yeah, so pick one of these up if you see them. There's a bunch of cool projects you can do. They're just cool to have around, and when you want one, you'll want one. There you go.
All right. Jeremy or Maury, sorry.
Maury.
I'll make this quick.
That might run on the Pi.
No, I saw this game. It was reviewed on one of the gaming sites I follow on Twitter and such. It's called Bayonetta. It looked like a really neat third-person FPS game. You know, that's kind of my wheelhouse as far as gaming goes. So not third-person, but FPSs. It seemed like it had good graphics, good story. It got really good ratings. So, and it's cheap. I think it's like $20 right now, and probably next Steam sale to go way below that. So, something to check out.
Yeah, I've heard really good things about this PC port. And apparently, it's pretty good. The game is I've always heard good things about. Was it originally on originally on Wii or something like that? 360 maybe?
PS4, I think.
No, it wasn't PS4.
It was PlayStation.
Well, it might have been PS3. Bayonetta is a last generation game because Bayonetta 2 was on the Wii U because Nintendo made some weird deal. But
did they actually made a game for that?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Bayonetta's pretty cool from what I've heard.
Yeah, well, I don't play consoles, so I'm a little behind at times on those games and all.
That's a good place to be with games sometimes, because how much is this? I know you just said it, but
it's $20.
$20. It's better than paying $60.
Yeah.
Turns out it's probably still a good game.
Can't argue that.
That is true. All right, cool. I guess that about wraps it up. PCPro.com/podcast, where you can find the show notes for this episode. If you're listening to it, then chances are the show notes are probably sitting there at the top of the page. Twitter.com/Ryan Shrout. And, oh, by the way, go see him tomorrow if you're
Today.
in London. Today. Now.
No,
maybe.
yesterday.
Probably now.
Maybe
go
now.
see him now.
No,
in
yesterday.
London.
Just
Figure it out.
go drive around London
Yeah.
frantically and find Ryan. Twitter.com/PCPer as well. That's where we usually post up when we got reviews done. And that's about it. With that, I'm Alan Mamontano.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Maury Tattleman.
Now I'm Ken Addison.
See you guys. Thanks for listening.
If you enjoyed this content, consider supporting in-depth technical content by contributing at patreon.com/PCPer.